Improvement Services Committee meeting at 6:02 p.m. Let the record reflect that Alderman Weary, Alderman Burnett, Alderman Johnson are present. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Approval of minutes.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alder Weary. Any discussion or amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Regular business, item D, regular business number 1, consideration of possible action on request by Alder Johnson and the authorization of the installation of crosswalk art at the intersection of Broadway and Hubbard Streets. Steve, you just want me to take it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I just had, the On Broadway Design Committee had put forth this request to install crosswalk art. So I think what I would probably just do at this time is just entertain a motion to open the floor for interested parties.
Motion to open the floor. Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Sam, if you just want to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Samantha Moss, W 1942 Vandenberg Street, Freedom, Wisconsin 54130. I'm good.
Yep.
I'm going to pass these out real quick. So as I said, my name is Sam. I work with On Broadway, and
Sam,
I'm
if you could hand
also
that to staff, too.
lead of the design committee from our staff. And what we are proposing is the approval of doing crosswalk art in the Broadway district. So as you can see from this handout, our goal is to do two items of crosswalk art. They would be on the corner of Hubbard and Broadway on the Hubbard Street areas in between the white crosswalk lines. You can see in the picture. We do have an artist lined up. His name is Peter Corey. He has not drawn out a design yet because we wanted to make sure that if we have this approved, then we aren't wasting his time, that kind of a thing. But we do have an artist lined up. Some details about the crosswalk art, if you are not familiar with these done in other communities. The art would be between the transverse white lines. In our community, we have, in that space at least, just 2 lines to mark the crosswalk. So it would be in between that, not covering those lines. We would use street grade paint, non-reflective, so it's not something that's gonna kind of be any sort of traffic signal, if you will. We're open to whatever paint the city would like us to use on that space. Typically, talking to other communities, any street grade paint is usually the most effective. In the space, we want to keep it a little bit more simple, not adding any words, ads, logos, promotions, 3D, anything like that. We don't want this to be something that's going to cause any issues. We just want to add a nice aesthetic piece to our Broadway district. Again, no patterns that are going to be confused as traffic control devices. As far as implementing the crosswalk and putting it in, we estimate that it'll take about 4 to 5 hours to complete one crosswalk when we are actually having our artists paint it. According to other communities, this seems to be an ideal time frame. These are a little bit shorter lifespans. They're going to be about 1 to 2 years, so it's not going to be something that you're going to see when your grandkids are around. And but it's still going to add a nice piece to the district. And ideally, we would love to install these before winter hits. You might ask why those Hubbard Street intersections. We specifically chose that space because there is a stop sign on both sides. The lines are also already drawn, so cars have to stop no matter what. Those are crossing spaces. Vehicles in that area are traveling under 30 miles an hour. This is one of the requirements in many of the other communities in Wisconsin and other areas as well. It's not quite as heavily trafficked as other areas. It's also highly visible to pedestrians and people visiting the Broadway district. It is not considered a state, federal, or county highway, and it's a smaller space, 1 lane going each way. You might wonder why we want to do crosswalk art instead of maybe some of the other forms. We've done a variety of art in our Broadway district, and we think this would be a neat, unique piece to add on to those art pieces. It would beautify our district. It matches our branding and identity. Broadway district is starting to work towards being a more artsy culture vibe, so that would definitely match what we are trying to brand ourselves as. And then it also makes Broadway a point of interest in other communities. These draw a lot of attention from travelers, tourists, all that good stuff. And we want to see if this is something that will draw people to Broadway and to downtown Green Bay. Some of the obstacles that you might think of when we do a project like this, obviously funding is always the first red flag that comes up. This is an on-Broadway funded project, so we will cover the costs associated with making this happen. We would have to work with DPW to close the space during painting and also during prep. Other communities usually work with their city officials and close during a time that is slower or during events. So those are some options. Like some communities have said, Sundays are slower in their downtown, so they do it then. We're definitely willing to work around the traffic schedule and other things going on. Some communities have had the concern of the paint being a slippery surface. We were recommended to put sand in the paint if that's something that we need to do for safety reasons for people walking. And then just making sure that the design that we are going to put on is approved by all the necessary people. If we have this approved, we will need to get the artist designs approved. We will work with him to get some samples out and ready to go. Choose a date for the setup and installation so we can start planning towards the final piece. Secure the necessary permits to close down the areas so that we can safely paint the crosswalks. Work with DPW for those street closures so that we have all the correct items in place for that, and then promote so that way people know that this new art installation is going to be happening in the district. The last little piece of the handout is other examples, specifically in Wisconsin. There are some pieces from Milwaukee, from Wausau, Reedsburg, and Wapaka. So you can see some examples. Some are more simple, some are more elaborate. We are open to working with the city on what makes the most sense for our downtown community. But that is everything that I had to say. If anyone needs to add anything else.
Any questions?
Boy, you pretty much covered everything. Well presented. How much is the cost? I mean, I guess it doesn't matter since we're not paying for it, but is this something you'd be willing to do as it wears out, so it doesn't look bad? Let's say in 2 years it's wearing down and looking.
It kind of depends on how much it wears in that space. I think ideally that space is a great location so it's not going to have quite as much traffic on it. Other communities have said that usually where the tires run is where it wears out. I think we're definitely willing to kind of keep an eye on it and touch up as needed based on the city, obviously, on making sure it's safe and closing when we need to do that. But other communities, once it starts to wear down, they power wash and things like that too. So it really depends on kind of what paint we end up using. Some of them do last longer than others. Some of the quotes would be around, I think it would be around $1,000 to $3,000 for one. But again, that kind of varies on the crosswalk, the design, and the paint, because some of the asphalt, and depending on the paint type, does absorb a lot of it. So we've definitely reached around and got a lot of tips on what works best.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Anybody else here who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to close the floor.
So moved.
Second?
A motion by Alder Bonetta, second by Alder Weary. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Staff?
Well, quite simply, crosswalk art is prohibited within crosswalks by the Federal Highway Administration. What we did prior to the meeting was give you a handout that includes an email from the Institute of Traffic Engineers. The next item that's in there is a memorandum from 2013 from the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration. The last item in there is Chapter 3, Section 2, Subject 18, Crosswalks from the Traffic Guidelines Manual from the Department of Transportation. What they do allow examples of aesthetic pavement treatments that include brick lattice patterns, paving bricks, paving stones, cobbles, or other simulated types of paving, and they have to be in acceptable colors: red, rust, brown, burgundy, clay, tan, or other similar earth tone equivalents. Anything that attempts to communicate with any user, road user, that being a pedestrian, bicyclist, or motorist, or otherwise degrades the effectiveness of the legally marked transverse crosswalk lines is simply not permitted by FHWA, and FHWA has indicated that any agency knowingly violating the MUTCD risks losing funding for highway projects. FHWA will not fund projects or roadways which have non-compliant traffic control devices, and they may withhold funds for other projects within that jurisdiction that have allowed those markings. We were granted a experimental crossing. I believe that's at Gray and Dousman back in 2007. That one is wearing out and will not be refurbished because it's inconsistent with the FHWA requirements. The ones that were installed in 2009 on Main Street are simulated brick and they are white in color. So they are consistent with what FHWA has approved. So DPW, with the examples that have been provided in the handout that Sam gave us, I'm not necessarily seeing anything in here as far as crosswalk art that we could support. Specifically, this Milwaukee, Wisconsin piano key, that is the installation that's referenced on page 2 of the ITE guidance, the first document in the handout that we gave to you. So DPW simply, given what we know from FHWA and the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, we can't support crosswalk art if there is some sort of a pattern crosswalk that would simulate some other type of paving, like paving stones, cobbles, that type of thing that would be done in a muted earth tone color. That's something we would be open to discussion on.
So how do these other cities do this? I mean, you got cities all across the country that do it.
There are very few cities within the United States. Most of the examples that you see are actually overseas. And that's why most of the examples you see come from overseas. We do have some communities in the U.S. who have done it. They are inconsistent with the FHWA, and they do run the risk of not only losing FHWA funding, but because they are inconsistent with the MUTCD, they have put their own communities at risk for lawsuits if an accident happens. That could include anything from a ped being hit by a car to a car accident, car versus car, because a motorist was distracted by the crosswalk art. Matter of fact, just recently, there are some simulated 3D crosswalk treatments that were installed on an experimental basis because the 3D nature of it would instinctively cause folks to slow down as they approach the crosswalks. Those 3D treatments caused enough accidents that FHWA has subsequently rescinded the experimental approvals of all of the other types of treatments, and now we're left with just what they've described in the documents that I provided to you.
So you talk about these experimental approvals, including the one on, was it Gray and Dousman?
Yes.
I guess, what are the guidelines or basis for approving experimental?
Well, again, the Dousman one actually does simulate a brick paver design. It's circular pavers instead of more of a linear paver type application. The experimental nature on that was because of the color that was involved. They were muted colors, but there was more than just earth tone in there. It was red, orange, brown.
Yeah, terracotta type.
Yeah, more in the terracotta range, but it wasn't one consistent color across there. A community would have to write a petition to FHWA seeking approval of something and have FHWA respond in the affirmative.
So that could be an option.
It's an option that if the council wishes us to pursue, it's something we could do, but based on everything that we know, conversations through ITE with FHWA, we are very confident FHWA will come back and not grant that. Like I said, they've recently rescinded all of their experimental approvals.
Okay, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, and I agree, you see a lot of them overseas, but I've also seen them in just about every major city that I've visited in the U.S. I've seen them in Seattle, I saw them in Kansas City, I saw them in Los Angeles, saw them in New York. Obviously, we've got 4 cities here in Wisconsin. It's just, a bit puzzling to me that many cities are doing it. And to be honest with you, I even went to the National Main Street Conference, and somebody there from South Dakota had presented about how they are legal. And I didn't quite understand all the specifics behind that, but that it's there's a particular code, that she referenced that sometimes is interpreted one way, but it's been determined that it could be interpreted to allow it as long as certain guidelines are met. And again, unfortunately, I don't have that in front of me. It was a conference I was at a few months ago, but I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts, feedback?
Just a few.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The memo mentions highways. Does that mean even cross streets and cross street?
A highway as defined in state statute actually takes it right down to a local street.
Now, that would be for the through street, but I'm talking about the street that goes across it.
Any local street, yes,
Even-
right down to
even-
any residential street,
Okay, that
any
happens to
street,
cross it? Okay.
any street.
Okay, the street we're talking about, Hubbard, is not the highway.
Yes, Hubbard would be considered a highway under state statutes, as would Broadway.
The singular term used for all
Yes, as opposed to
transportation
using
roadways.
roadway, they use highway.
Okay, I see. Even though it's a cul-de-sac on both sides?
Yes,
So do you know if Milwaukee still has the piano keys, or
they very well may.
Wapaka,
Wausau definitely has their color treatment.
what's that, Reedsburg?
Wapaka
Milwaukee.
just, I know, posted theirs recently. I saw that pop up on social media.
If there's a will, there's a way, there's gotta be a way to do it. I'm open to.
Well, I don't want to obviously put the city in a position that compromises things, so I wouldn't force it through if we weren't comfortable, that the city was absolved from risk. So, but at the same time, I think that maybe there's a little bit more research that that we could maybe engage in to determine exactly if these cities have done additional legwork to get that out of approval or compliance, or if they have authentically put themselves at risk.
Are we interested in holding this item for a while? or-
Yeah, I see Sam wanted to speak again, so I entertain a motion to open the floor.
So, second?
Talking
Can we just come up
about.
to the podium, Sam?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I was just going to mention, we're talking about other communities who have done this and having some of them done more recently. I know when I was doing my research, many cities like, I believe it was Austin, Seattle, and Milwaukee, I think, if I remember correctly, all have on their city website a form for the requirements for a crosswalk and a crosswalk art. And then if you would like to apply and do one for the community, so that's something to research too, that they have these directly partnering with the city and on their website, and they're still valid. When calling around, they're still being used, and some of the communities like Wausau, for example, had such a great response rate to these recent ones that the city is actually hoping that they do more vibrant, colorful ones and more in the continuing years. I know I was a little concerned when I had seen what you had read earlier, so I wasn't sure exactly where that fell, but it caught my attention that there's that, then there was also these efforts going on with the other communities through their city halls and through Department of Transportation. So just wanted to throw that in.
Steve, do you have an extra copy of this?
Mhm.
Could Sam have a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else wishing to speak?
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Opposed, motion carries. Alder Burnett?
Yes, I think public art is growing. It's a growing trend, and it's a good trend. And on Broadway's done quite a bit, not just on Broadway, but other areas in our downtown area. And so I don't want to be quick to discourage it or to say no if we can find some way to keep it alive a little bit. And in the end, if it's public safety and we're gonna put ourselves at the risk of losing highway funding, road funding from the federal or state governments, then I think that's an easy decision to make at that time. But there's just gotta be something, even if it's much muted and proper signage. And I don't want to vote it down tonight. I'd just rather refer it to staff or hold it even. Maybe if we hold it, then group it on Broadway. Sam, if your group decides, maybe we're not going to move forward with this, we'll push through something else or work on something else, then at least you have that option. But I just think denying it right now is just not something I'm prepared to do.
Okay, I think maybe what I would recommend is that we do hold it. I think would be where I would favor this if the design committee, if this truly is a project that they want to advance, I think they could take some time to comb through some of these rulings, maybe understand a little bit better what other communities are doing. Sounds like, referring to staff, it sounds like staff is pretty clear in your position, unless I'm mistaken.
And that's consultation between myself, Mr. Pirla, who's the operations director and parking manager, also the former traffic engineer, and also working with the current traffic engineer.
Okay, so referring it to staff wouldn't really get us any further, is my point. You guys have done your diligence.
Yeah, we've done our research.
Yeah, in which case then I would say let's take the information you provided, put it on the shoulders of the design committee over at On Broadway, and if this is something they want to advance, come back with something new in a month. If you have anything new, or you could communicate, I guess, to Director Grenier if it's something that you want to pull, you could let him know that too. So I would maybe entertain a motion to hold.
So moved.
Second, in particular, just till it's ready to come back. Just
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
Or maybe hold till the next meeting. Would a month give you enough time?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll hold till the next meeting then.
I think so. I mean, just doing a quick Google search here, there's a Milwaukee article that 20 cities across the U.S. have done these rainbow crossings, to celebrate something. So obviously, there's a way to do it, but we'll find it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 2, consideration of possible action request by Alder Scannell on behalf of John Thomas Korntved for 8 additional overnight parking exemptions at 868.5 Dousman Street, held over from the June 12, 2019 Improvement Services Committee meeting. Director Grenier.
All I have is an email from Alder Scannell that indicates that Mr. Korntved has requested 8 more overnight exemptions to allow family and friends to park on the street. There's no
time
indication
frame
as to
or-
why they would exceed the 6, if it's a situation with limited driveway capability and multiple cars, if it's children home from college. I mean, there's really nothing, that just the request itself.
Move to approve.
But he did request 8.
Second. It's got to be a reason. I mean,
We have a motion to approve. We have by Alder Weary, second by Alder Burnett. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item number 3, consideration of possible action on Safe Park programs to temporarily lift the on-street overnight parking restriction for those vehicles participating in the program that display the appropriate program hang tag.
Okay, Don, please let me know if I butcher your last name. Meldy, who's the president of the Brown County Tavern League, approached us to work on a Safe Park program, which would allow individuals who have been frequenting establishments of the Brown County Tavern League to utilize some sort of a placard or marker on the car, which would be granted or issued by the tavern, that would allow that person to leave the car parked on street without violating the ordinance and receiving a ticket, to encourage folks to practice exercise responsible judgment and utilize an alternate form of transportation to get home if they've been at the bar. Don and I had the first meeting, and what we looked at was some sort of a placard or ticket that would be issued by the bar. The Tavern League would be responsible for the cost of preparing and printing up those placards. They would have to be in a consistent spot. What we're looking at is lower left-hand corner of the front windshield, so that parking enforcement agents have the ability to view that when they're out doing their rounds. What we have talked about providing to the Tavern League as well is a map of locations throughout the city where parking, off-street parking, at no cost is available, because currently we do not charge for parking in lots of ramps between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. daily, and then from 6 p.m. Friday to 6 a.m. on Monday. One of the things that we had asked for through the Tavern League was with the placard that's given out, if we could have an identifier on there for not only the establishment that's granting the placard, but also the server who's granting that. And then we have the ability to monitor those placards that are handed out to see if we have a particular establishment or a particular server who's constantly handing these things out, and is that a responsible server issue, not for the purpose of penalizing the establishment or penalizing the server, but more so that if we see something, then we can approach the Tavern League and say, hey, we're seeing this trend at this bar with this server, and then have the Tavern League intervene on our behalf for educational purposes, so we can get responsible serving as a component of this. Subsequent to my first meeting, I turned it over to Chris Pierlot to work with Don, and they've had a couple of meetings since, so I would turn over to Chris to have him add any comments that he may have, and then after Chris is done, would ask you to consider opening the floor, because Don is here as well.
Yeah, as the parking manager for the city of Green Bay, we've talked about these things in the past on numerous different occasions throughout my years with the city. Finally, going forward, it's a good program. My comments are more supplemental to with Don leading a group, including police department, parking division, Alvin Johnson, and of course the Tavern League, put together for a program. Very simple and straightforward, easy to identify the vehicles and enforce. Parking division, we've gone right down to our enforcement staff, our field staff, and the proposal, as Don will shortly lay it out, like I said, very easy and straightforward, is it's a no-brainer for parking division to identify and see, okay, that this is a vehicle, this is a safe park vehicle, we're gonna leave it alone. Someone acted responsibly, and we're not gonna worry about citing them overnight. They got home safe, that type of thing. And of course, throughout this program, we'll keep in touch with each other, and you live and learn. It's a brand new program that I'm sure other communities or entities have, but we have no experience with it. So you build it and you tweak as you go, and just make better if there's anything that we need to make better. But with that, I would very much ask that Don share. He's a good speaker. It's a great program, and he got us excited in it. So we would like to go forward with it.
Entertained a motion to open the floor.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. State your name and address for the record, sir.
Don Melde. It's Melde, M-J-E-L-D-E, 641 North Huron Street, Superior, Wisconsin, 54115. And yeah, basically what these gentlemen were alluding to is kind of created a situation where if somebody's making a responsible choice, they're not going to be punished for it overnight, and it's going to not put other people at risk throughout the community. So this is pretty much the final draft. There's a little tweak I'm going to do to it. Above the month is going to be a set of years right here. And it'll be a placard that you can hang on your rear view. So if you put it on your dash, it's not hiding anything from it. And it'll still be visible for the parking division as well. It will have the months and the day to circle, so nobody's scribbling anything out. Any alterations voids this form, so you have to put anything specifically. Shows the time that they put it out there, and it has the bartender initials. Because when it comes to a bar name, the initials is all you need for us to figure out which bartender it is. This overrides on the street overnight parking restrictions from 3 to 5 a.m. only. It doesn't override any meter downtown parking restrictions. We're talking about side streets. It's void during times of extreme weather, like snow emergencies or flood warnings, obviously. It's a common sense approach. through the Tavern League. I have a committee, I'll have a committee drawn up through our board of directors that's going to oversee this monthly. On the top right, there's going to be a code, so we know how many we give to each tavern and see that they use it in their specific location. I've been working with the police department on this. As far as printing costs, we are going to use the Brown County Crime Prevention Foundation to cover all printing costs, to which we are also a member and donate to as well. Let's see, there was one more thing I was going to mention. Oh, yeah, with that interactive map that we received through them also, we would put it on our website and probably the CVB website as well, and get moving forward with that, so people can tell that there are places to park overnight, not on the streets, so you don't have that false sense of security if you went out for a couple at night. We don't see this as being something that's going to be used a lot, like a expeditious rate. We just see this as something that somebody's making the right choice. Let's not punish them for it.
Any questions? I guess that's it, Don.
Okay, thanks.
I entertain a motion to close the floor.
Move. Second.
We have a motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alder Wery. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I do want to at least invite Alder Steuer.
A question, that's all.
Oh, sorry, that's what that was.
Yeah, that's,
You gotta speak up, sir.
well, I tried.
I thought you wanted to speak to the item.
Well,
Just
All right.
cardio.
Well, we'll entertain a motion to open the floor again.
Oh. Okay.
pretty loud.
Motion open floor.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Wery, second by Alder Burnett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay, motion carries.
Well, Don, I applaud you for this, for working on this. What was the question I was gonna ask?
Oh, come on.
I got,
Better think of one now.
oh, man.
Council President Mark Steuer.
My birthday's coming up too, so. I'm sorry.
No pressure.
I'll have to come back. Well, as soon as he sits down, I'm gonna remember.
Thank you for saying, for the compliment. It takes a village. It wasn't for everybody around us right here when it happened, so. Thank you.
I apologize.
Can we do that? Talk while we leave it open?
You just-
All right.
No, it matters.
Just mumbling to buy you time, Mark.
Oh, I know the
There we
question.
go. We're stalled. There we go, good job.
I don't need
He's
lunch.
not here.
I skipped too bad.
In your research, were there other communities that you saw that had this?
Not this specifically, kind of wrote off of the idea of what they do in other municipalities like Seattle, Austin, Colorado, Denver area. They all have overnight parking regulations there around their busy areas where people are having too much to drink and it's curbing drunk driving in that area. So if this saves one, it saves plenty.
Then there'll also be designated areas like parking ramps or different things that you might work with Public Works as far as.
There are places where you can
Designated areas.
park for free overnight, and
Yes.
that's where we're gonna get that interactive map, so we can let the community know where you can park, to where you're not gonna get a ticket, and if you do find yourself on a side street and you don't feel comfortable getting your vehicle, we don't want that to be punished, basically, for taking a responsible means home.
All right, thanks for your patience.
Motion to return to regular order of business.
Seconds.
Motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alder Wery to return to regular order of business. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I guess I would just add that Don had brought this program idea to my attention, and it seemed to make a lot of sense to me. We had a great meeting, I think, as Chris alluded to. I mean, this was after Don had met with Steve, and then we met with Chris and the police department and a number of other organizations, and I think we really vetted this out. Like, what if this happens? What if that happens? And we tried to really kind of come up with a set of rules that really, I guess, kind of delivered answers on those unique situations and circumstances. And to me, at the end of the day, this isn't about rewarding people who, got into that condition. This is about keeping the people who don't have a choice safe on our streets. And if I think to Don's point, if we, one person is saved from an unfortunate accident, I think it makes the program worthwhile. And I think the other piece that's important to note is that while this policy might be more of a reactive approach to that situation, we are also heavily advocating for a proactive approach by promoting ahead of time to those individuals that, are thinking ahead that, hey, I may find myself in that situation, so I can park in the ramp, I can park in this lot, and not have to worry about this, irregardless of a safe park pass. So, and one of the things, I guess, that if this is adopted, that I would encourage city staff to do is to have that, be a page on our website that's clearly marked that this is how the program works. This is where you can park beforehand so that it's not an issue.
As our intention to.
Yeah, so those are my comments. Alder.
Thank you, Chair. Don did speak at the Protection and Policy meeting the other night as well, and spoke very well on that as well. And I'm just wondering, Brown County Tavern League, and I might have to ask him that, but if you remember the conversation that was there the other night, every bar, every tavern in Brown County is not part of the Tavern League. So I guess I would like to just have someone touch on the other taverns that are not included in the Brown County Tavern League and find out if that's incorporated as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that, Alder Steuer. That was, I guess, a conversation that occurred during the broader meeting that we had is the Brown County Tavern League, with the volume of members that they have, seemed to be like an easy entry point as a third party to help us kind of manage a program like this. I think when we start looking at the second iteration of this program, it would be nice to find a way to include non-members as well. But they have kind of the governance structure and the oversight that can help us work with staff and to monitor any challenges that might arise. We can take corrective action, and then we can perfect the program before we roll it out to those that really don't have that additional level of oversight.
And I'm sure it's not a matter of saying, hey, we want to incorporate you other taverns into the league, but it is a starting point.
Yeah.
So I agree with him, so.
And I would just add to Alder Steuer, I originally had put this is just really a point of clarification. I originally put this to protection policy because I thought it would have required an ordinance change. Turns out that it doesn't. This is just a policy change that parking division can adopt, which is why it's in front of this committee tonight. So,
Sure.
right?
Alder Weir? No, I think it's a great idea. Don looks excellent. Alderman Johnson. I tried to do this a couple of years ago. We got squashed right away, but you put it together and thought about every angle, so it was much easier to think it through and approve it. So it's well done. It's overdue. Love it.
Okay. All right. Looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion by Alder Weir to approve, second by Alder Burnett. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, consideration of possible action on report of the purchasing manager. Item A, request approval to purchase televised sewer inspection system for the sanitary sewer department from Aries Industries for $91,073. Rick?
I believe that the summary of the quotes is included in your packet for this one. This is a portable camera system that will be utilized by the sewer department to check on conditions on an as-needed basis. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that equipment, Steve?
Not particularly, Rick. As needed is pretty much daily.
Any questions or discussion? Entertain a motion to
Move to approve.
Second.
motion by Alder Burnett, a second by Alder Weary. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, discussion of possible action on the award of a contract for televised inspections of sanitary sewer basins to be performed in 2019.
I am going to give you the handout for both B and C. When we did the agenda for this meeting, these bids had not been finalized, so I'm bringing you the recommended results tonight. So these are two different contracts. The basin televising, again, we hire a contractor to go and provide the closed caption TV inspection of our storm and sanitary sewers. The basins are segregated because they are earmarked in advance. We know each year which basins need inspections, and so that money is set aside for those specific basins. The other contract is kind of an ad hoc contract, Section C, that the city would utilize, again, on an as-needed basis. So for the basin televising, we had 5 bids. and we're recommending the award to Northern Pipe and TV at $305,124.20 as a low bidder.
I know who we're not giving it to.
I think they were rebuilding the whole street.
Okay.
Entertain a motion to approve?
Move to approve Northern Pipe and TV.
Second.
Motion by Alder Brunette, second by Alder Weary. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 4C, discussion of possible action on the award of a 3-year contract for televised inspections of citywide standard sewers to be performed in 2019 to 2021. Rick?
This, again, is for the as-needed inspections. As it was described to me, we would order this work to be done prior to going in and doing any road construction or renovation. And that may just be the tip of the iceberg, but this, we bid as a 3-year contract. We're recommending the award for year 1 to Northern Pipe and TV for $136,790 with the options for years 2 and 3, assuming they perform satisfactorily in that first year.
Motion to award to Northern Pipe and TV as explained.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Alder Weary, second by Alder Brunette. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
Thank
Rick.
you.
Item number 5, report of actions taken by Department of Public Works. A, award of contracts. Item 1, to approve to award contract sewers 3-19. Part A to the low responsive bidder, Dorner Incorporated, in the amount of $307,450,000.
So sewers 3-19 actually has 2 parts to it. Part A is to Dorner Incorporated in the amount of $307,450. Part B is to In Situ Farm Technologies USA LLC in the amount of $437,425.90. We had 2 bidders for the Part A project and 4 bidders on the Part B part of the project. Very happy with the bids that we received. This is our basin repair, so as Rick was alluding to in the previous item, when we go out and do basin televising, that's each drainage sub-basin on the sanitary sewer system. So we go through and we will inspect, using closed-circuit television cameras, we will inspect all of the sanitary sewer mains within that basin for the year, whereas the 3-year contract that Rick was talking about, that's the streets that comprise our program for the following year. So those streets are scattered across the city, not necessarily within a basin, so that's kind of the as-needed, if you will. When we find through the basin televising, so the basin televising we're going to do in 2019, will create a program for repairs in 2020. So the contract that we're talking about here, the Sewers 3-19 project, is those repairs that we found last year during the basin televising. The difference between the Part A and the Part B, the Part A is essentially open cut dig down type repairs, whereas the Part B is cast in place pipe, so we're doing lining work.
So this is just inspection?
No, this is actually the repairs
this
from
is
the
the repairs.
televising we
Got it.
did last year.
Okay.
So it's repairs to
Oh,
the
got
sanitary
it.
sewer system.
Got
And
it,
this
got it.
money, the money to perform this work was identified in the capital improvement program. It's a combination of sanitary sewer supported borrowing and transfer to capital fund within the sanitary sewer rate itself.
Okay.
So there's no levy impact, it's completely funded by the sanitary sewer system.
Okay. If it's agreeable to you, Steve, maybe we'll just march through this list and
Absolutely.
accept the report all at the end.
Okay.
So we have item 2 to approve to award contract sewers 4-19, mini sewers to low responsive bidder Highway Landscapers Incorporated in the amount of $152,034.50.
3 bids received. We were really shocked when we saw the Highway Landscapers bid come in. We've been talking to you folks over the past couple of years about the escalation in price, especially on the mini-stone contract. And it's because number 1, it was due to traffic control. Number 2, because we had a requirement to hold streets open to traffic, which we have now allowed local traffic only, not allowing pass-through traffic on some of the streets. And number three, this particular contract, like our resurfacing sewers contract, involves a lot of jumping around. So you may be putting in 50 feet of mini storm on a street and then jumping over and putting 150 feet on another street that's a mile and a half away. So there's a lot of mobilization, demobilization, and moving equipment around. Highway Landscapers, not being a large sewer contractor, but definitely capable of the work. This is their first foray into the mini storm, mini sewer contract. And these are prices that we were seeing 4 years ago. So I've had conversations with them. They're standing behind the bid. They think they can do it for this. So we're very happy with the pricing we saw. Last one that we have is what we handed out to you before the meeting. That would be item number 3. And that would be to approve the award for Bridge 1-19, the Wiesner Street pedestrian bridge. That would be to the low responsive bidder, Highway Landscapers, in the amount of $78,145. I had a conversation with the assistant city engineer and the civil engineer in Special Projects Division. We had 5 contractors pull plans on this, 3 of which had multiple phone conversations with our engineering staff right up to the day of bidding. And at the end, only Highway Landscapers submitted a bid. What I can tell you is the bid was below our engineering estimate. So when we got the bid back, even though there's only one, it's a good bid. And this is the kind of, it's a small pedestrian bridge. Be locally fabricated, brought out to the site and then assembled and erected on site. Highway will probably need to hire a subcontractor with a larger crane because they have more along the lines of smaller wheeled backhoe type equipment. So they're going to have to subcontract out just for moving the bridge once it's assembled. But other than that, this type of work is definitely in their wheelhouse, so we're very confident in that bid as well. Nice to see Highway bidding on some other projects here with the city. So staff was pleased with all 4 of these contracts and have made those awards.
Okay. So again, I'll just keep moving down the list and we'll just take 5 all at once unless there's objection, but we'll go item B, granting of licenses. Number 1, sidewalk builder. Item A, Delahout Custom Concrete LLC, Dorner Equipment Sales and Service LLC, Paul Connard Construction Company Incorporated, Ramco Construction Services LLC. Steve, any comments?
We have approved the licenses for Delahunt, Connard, and Ramco. Dorner Equipment Sales, we do anticipate being able to sign off on that one. We're just waiting on one reference check to come back on that, so we don't see any problems there. So we'll go ahead and execute those licenses, get those guys out.
Okay.
Especially with sidewalk builders. My word, we usually got 20 to 25 sidewalk builders approved within the city at any given time. And residents who are looking for approved flat work contractors never can find one who has availability. So it's definitely in the city's best interest. If folks are capable and qualified to do the work, to get them approved as soon as possible so we can get sidewalk work completed here.
Okay. And then item 2, tree and brush trimmer. Item A, basic tree service. B, consciously fresh tree service.
Again, both of these are returning contractors that we've been pleased with the quality of the work, so we've gone ahead and approved those at a staff level.
Okay. Item 3, underground sprinkler system for Conserva Irrigation.
And again, that's a returning contractor who's worked for us in the past. They do good work, so we've gone ahead and executed that one.
Okay. I entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Alder Weary, second by Alder Burnett. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The informational director's report on recent activities of Public Works Department.
Just 2 things I wanted to make you aware of very quickly here. First of which, East Town Mall, Mason Main Street area. We have had we've given all the data over to the consultant, and the consultant has completed a preliminary run with the storm information, provided a copy of that output to us. When we were reviewing the output, we did discover some issues with the model, so we've made revisions to some pipe information relative to length, slope, and diameter of pipe, and resubmitted that back to the consultant. They are revising the model and rerunning it, and we hope to have some sort of recommendation relative to that Main and Mason area for you at the August meeting. Didn't get it necessarily rostered on the agenda, but we did want to make you aware of that. Second item is relative to the Metro boat launch. Don't know how much of this you folks have been exposed to, but at Public Works, we've been hearing about it for months. With the high water levels on the bay, significant damage has occurred with the launch facilities up at Metro due to wave action out there. We had to pull a couple of launches out of service, and by 3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, we pulled everything out of the water except for 2 launch facilities. Normally we have 5 plus a pedestrian accessible long dock. The pedestrian accessible long dock we've got barricaded off. It's simply unsafe. The connection point to get from the land out to the floating docks is what's being damaged. The way that the docks out there are constructed and how they were designed, the floating docks, especially for the boat launch rails, there are a series of pilings that are driven into the bed of the bay and the river there, and the floating docks mount to those pilings. From the piling closest to shore back to the concrete ramps that you back your trailer down, that is more of a fixed segment. So there's a point on the piling that it bolts onto, and then there's actually a fixed point in the concrete that it bolts to. And the water levels being so high, those things are underwater and they're being battered by wave action. So what we were able to do, the sewer section is also responsible for all of our boat launching and docking facilities. We issued the challenge to those guys to go out there and take a peek at what you see and what can you come up with to fix this? How can we get some launch rails back in? And true to form, they responded very quickly and came up with a fantastic idea. They were able to salvage sections off some of the broken facilities and get 2 of the docking facilities back in order. They were able to take existing floating docks. We had guys out there cutting torches and welders, hacking things apart and creating new mounting pieces and all that kind of fun stuff. So it was all field designed and fabricated by the guys. They were able to extend the floating section closer to the shoreline, and then rather than the fixed piece that normally goes between the first piling and the concrete, actually goes between a floating dock section and a new mount location on the concrete above the water line. So we've got 2 of the docks back in operation. We're hoping to continue work out there and possibly get a 3rd one out of the 5 back in operation for this year. We've gotten some preliminary feedback from some of the folks who are out there using the launch facilities. They're very appreciative that staff was able to get something done. They really like how it turned out. The biggest problem that we're seeing is because the ramps are so long. By the time you can actually get the ramp, you get the trailer back, you got the truck almost underwater before you get the boat off the trailer. But I mean, that's a function of how the ramps are built and the water levels. So again, we're trying to retrofit a 3rd launch if we can get that done yet this year. And then I've been talking with Director Ditchite on this. The Metro boat launch is kind of it's another one of those areas in the city that DPW and Parks overlap on area responsibility. And there is a Metro boat launch fund that's primarily just the revenue that we receive from boat launch passes. So what I'm working with Dan on, that also has to fund the maintenance of that building that's out there where the restrooms are and all that kind of fun stuff. For the bulk of the year, the Coast Guard property's been underwater. The kiosk that has the rules and the tickets, as the envelopes, and where you actually deposit your daily boat launch deposits, that's underwater, so it's difficult for users to get to it. So we're looking at moving that stuff over and then checking to see how much money's in that fund and seeing if there's some way we can start purchasing new floating docks to make this a more adaptable docking facility. Those existing boat launch facilities that are out there are over 30 years old right now, and they're primarily wood, not lightweight materials. It's very, very difficult and very unsafe for the sewer section to go out there. We kind of have to do a lot of this work with cranes, and you have to put the floating docks together, then with a barge you move them out into the river and slide them in between the piles so you can launch off of both sides. And we're hearing reports from boaters that there's not enough space between the pilings, the boats are banging off the pilings, so we may go to a single-sided launching type facility, more indicative of what our docking facilities down at City Deck are. But again, all that stuff's gonna cost money, so Dan and I are working on a plan to do that sequentially over the next couple of years, so it funds itself, and hopefully we won't have to go and borrow for it. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we were able to get 2 of those launching facilities in, so there is accommodations for up to 4 trailers at once right now.
I want to ask Steve, has this been going on for a while now? Because I know you were late putting in, the reason I'm asking is for the county, they're looking at that Nick Lake site. And Bill Acker's been saying that there haven't been a lot of people buying, registering and buying, their watch. And he's thinking that, well, then we don't need it because it's down so much, but now it sounds like Metro's been having a lot of problems, that not a lot of people, and I have not seen a lot of people out on the bay this summer, which I'm surprised, the fishing, and usually we see a lot out there. Is
Well,
it because of?
we've been having issues at Metro for about the last 2 to 3 years because of the high water conditions. We weren't late getting in this year. That's what time we have established as the boating season. We're not out there as early as the walleye fishermen want us to
Okay,
be.
yeah, good.
But again, the walleye fishermen wanted us to be out there in March, and when I contacted them, responded to them earlier this year, we told them that in March or April of 2017, the ice was 10 miles out, and when we got that snowstorm in the middle of April, we had ice damage
Ooh, right.
to our facilities.
Mhm.
This year, when they were screaming for us to get the docks in the water, we only had ice 2 miles out. So it was 8 miles closer. There was no way I was gonna risk damage to the docks or injury to the staff by trying to go out there with a crane and a boat. And one of the things we do here is, well, you guys need to get in quicker. De Pere is able to get in quicker. Well, De Pere has more modern docks, which don't require the same exposure of their staff that ours do, and they're several miles upriver. They're not subject to the wave action at the mouth of the bay like we are.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, there are some big differences between our facility and De Pere's. But, these things have been good docks. They've served their life, and they've done a good job, but they're wearing out. Talking to the folks out there when they were doing the retrofits, one of the problems we had salvaging some floating pieces to adapt and reuse for this purpose. Again, they're primarily wood frame structures with the floats underneath. We've replaced so much of the boards over the years that there's really not a whole heck of a lot there to screw into. The wood is starting to rot and dry rot. It's time.
Motion to receive and place on file. Oh, sorry.
Just have one quick comment. I know we've been playing some email tag about that alley off of Caroline, where there was a large tree that fell and took
Yeah,
out
we
a
got
chunk.
that on the,
I was gonna give you a map, because
Sure.
I was asking
yeah,
again where it
I
was.
physically, I'll take care of it,
Okay.
but when we're done here.
Yeah, because there's a hole and people keep driving through
Yeah,
it.
and it's on our to-do list to fix that
Okay,
up
good,
now that
good.
the resident got that tree removed.
Yeah, here. Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion by Alder Burnett to receive and place on file.
Second.
Second by Alder Weary. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned.
I know we were playing kind of email thing back and forth. Actually, during the meeting,